You know that feeling, right? You wake up and there's this knot of anxiety in your stomach, but you can't figure out why. Nothing's wrong. Well, in this explainer, we're going to get to the bottom of why that happens, and more importantly, what it actually means.
And that's the big question, isn't it? Your eyes open, the day is brand new, but there's this immediate sense of dread or unease. It's so confusing, and honestly, it can really set a negative tone for your whole day if you let it.
Yeah, this quote just nails it, doesn't it? It's not like a full-blown panic attack. It's just this quiet, humming tension under the surface, a kind of pressure that feels like it came from nowhere, which is exactly what makes it so weird and unsettling. All right, so let's really dig into that morning feeling, because it turns out the experience itself is incredibly common, but the way most of us think about it is, well, just plain wrong.
You know, our first instinct is to immediately think something's wrong with us, right? We figure it must be some hidden fear we have, or a sign of personal weakness, or maybe we're just negative people. But the real story is actually way, way simpler than all that. And that's what leads us to this whole myth of personal failure. It's the negative story we automatically start telling ourselves the second we feel that quiet tension in the morning.
We take this really kind of biological thing that's happening and we make it deeply personal. We start hunting for a reason. And of course, the easiest place to point the finger is at ourselves. We think this feeling must mean something is wrong with me.
And the story just starts spinning. I feel anxious, so I must be unmotivated to deal with today.
And then it just ramps up from there. Maybe I'm not ready for what's coming. Yeah, that's it. I must be totally unprepared. And it can get pretty harsh pretty fast, landing on something like this.
Why do I feel like this for no reason? Maybe I'm just mentally unstable. I mean, that is a heavy, heavy thing to put on yourself before you've even had a sip of coffee. So the big takeaway here is we invent this story of personal failure just to explain a physical sensation.
But what if that entire story is just wrong? Let's forget about personal flaws for a minute and look at what's actually going on in your brain and body. Let's look at the biological reality.
Okay, so here's the first big idea you need to grasp. Waking up isn't like flipping a light switch from off to on. It's way more like a dimmer switch being turned up nice and slow. Your mind and body are going through this really complex transition.
And this process, it happens in a few stages. First, your nervous system kind of kicks into gear. Part of that is a burst of the stress hormone cortisol, which sounds bad, but it's actually what helps you wake up. Then, your senses get sharper. Sounds might seem louder, light feels brighter, and finally, your conscious mind starts to plug back into the world.
So what all this creates is this temporary state, this heightened sensitivity. For a little while, everything just feels more intense. Your own thoughts can seem to echo in your head, and any little bit of uncertainty about the day ahead can feel like this huge, heavy weight. So the bottom line is, this feeling isn't just in your head. It's your biology just booting up for the day.
Okay, so if our brain is in this super sensitive wake-up mode, where does that anxious feeling actually come from? Well, that brings us to the real heart of the matter: anticipation without context. Think about it like this. Your brain is powering up, and it immediately starts scanning the horizon. It's asking, okay, what's on the docket for today? What do I have to do? But here's the catch. It's doing this before it has the full picture. It sees all the tasks without the timeline, without the plan. And this right here, this is the absolute heart of it. When your mind is just holding this big, fuzzy cloud of things to do and stuff that's going to happen, with no real order or story to it, our nervous system often just interprets that feeling as anxiety. So the feeling isn't anxiety about something specific, it's the raw feeling of anticipation itself, before your brain has had a chance to organize it. So once you get this, you can start telling yourself a totally different story. We can shift that feeling from a moment of alarm to just a moment of awareness. So let's just lay it out, side by side. The old way of thinking, the myth, is that this feeling is a danger signal, or worse, a sign of some personal failure. But the reality, it's much simpler. It's just a sign of transition. It's a totally normal, structural process of your mind waking up.
And you know what? This explains something we've all felt. Why that anxiety often just disappears after an hour or so. It's not because you magically fixed some deep, dark problem.
It goes away because your mind finally gets organized. You know, you get up, you have some coffee, you look at your calendar, you give that floating cloud of anticipation a structure, a narrative. The problem wasn't solved because there was never a problem to begin with.
So the next time you wake up with that feeling, just take a breath and remind yourself of this. Nothing is necessarily wrong. This is just the feeling of a mind coming online.
And it also means that nothing about you is broken. You are not flawed. You're just experiencing a completely normal part of being a human who has to wake up.
That feeling doesn't need to be fought. It doesn't need to be fixed. Sometimes all it really needs is to be understood for what it truly is, a temporary biological state of transition.
And that really leaves us with a bigger question to think about, doesn't it? What if we started looking at anxiety in general this way? What if it's not always a problem we have to solve, but sometimes it's just a signal from our mind and our body that's waiting to be understood?